Hey, welcome to 600 Seconds in HRTech. My name is Dani Johnson, and today I'm here with Josh Blank, who is the president of OpenSesame. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing great, Dani. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being with us. I know there's some things going on at OpenSesame, and we definitely want to talk about those. But I want to start with maybe a softer question to give some people a sense for kind of where you're coming from. You've built companies before, so you haven't moved from company to company in a senior leadership role. You've actually built them. A couple of them were like 11 Wireless, Blue Bolt, some of those. What do you think is different now, especially with the AI question, than when you started those companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Blue Bolt, we started back early in 2002 timeframe, and it's a learning company for skilled trades professionals, electricians, plumbers, HVAC mechanics. And I think what's really different now is, especially in the age of AI, is the cost of finding out.
Okay.
In the past, I mean, testing a product idea, took a team an entire year to build something. Today, we can, with a small group, can build a working experiment in a matter of weeks, even faster sometimes. So I think that's kind of the biggest difference I see. But at the root of it all, it's about finding challenges that customers have and figuring out solutions to those challenges. And that really hasn't changed, just our ability to do so much quicker and in a much broader capacity today.
I had the opportunity to attend your offsite. Once a year, you do an offsite with all employees. And there's an unconference aspect of that. And I happened to attend your session. And your session was all about what's the OpenSesame killer, which I thought was fascinating because your organization deals in content. And I know you're expanding a little bit, and we'll definitely talk about that. I had to leave before that was over. What are some of the existential threats do you see that are coming for content companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great question. And I don't think we would be doing our job properly if we weren't looking down the road and figuring out who or what could disrupt us. And who better to disrupt this than ourselves? So that's why we did that exercise. And it was really interesting and got a lot of engagement from the group on that. And so I think where obviously the cost to create content is diminishing dramatically. I mean, it has been for years with the invention of the iPhone and all sorts of tools that, people in Hollywood could use to make movies much cheaper. But in our world, the cost of content creation is coming down dramatically with generative AI. But that just means that there's lots of maybe mediocre quality content. So I think, and we'll talk a little bit about this probably later, but the cost of trusted, verified, validated content is going to be worth more. So I think the areas that we experimented with in that exercise and that we're continuing to explore are really around not just content discoverability, but content validation, helping end learners keep track of all of the training that they've taken. Today, that's historically been the purview of the LMS and the companies, but as an individual, there's value in me keeping track of my career journey, my educational journey, those credentials that I need to do my job or to get a better job. So those are some of the things that came out of that we're exploring.
I've always been impressed with OpenSesame's ability to think beyond where they are right now. And one of the things that I've seen recently is your innovation lab, your AI innovation lab. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that is, what the purpose is, and how does it benefit your clients and customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the purpose of it is to answer questions with actual working software instead of slide decks or whiteboards. Okay. And we want to explore different ideas that relate to the future of workplace learning and figure out how to rapidly build a test that we can give to customers or partners or colleagues in the industry and actually have them experiment and play with it. So, we set up this lab in Austin to be an in-person workspace. We went remote completely in the pandemic. And I think for the type of work that really requires a lot of imagination and innovation, it's better to be in person. So, that's one aspect that's different from our day to day, the way we operate OpenSesame post pandemic today, which we've got, a very large distributed workforce. And so this is in person with a small team running these experiments. The other thing we're doing is we're holding workshops in the lab for not just customers, but others, companies in our industry who want to come in and experiment with ideas, learn how to maybe code something with an agent. So that's been really popular. In fact, we've got a few open slots in the fall, but a lot of them have filled up. So if you or your team ever want to come down and spend a day or two, we can run you through some of the things that we do in person. And then, but at the end of the day, the rules are pretty simple. Experiment really fast, test it really quickly, continue on with the ideas that seem to resonate and pause on the ones that don't get any traction.
I think this is really interesting, and it kind of follows some of the other things that I'm seeing. So, for example, I was talking to a friend of mine who was showing me his new website, and he said he vibe coded it over the weekend. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, yeah, we vibe coded it over the weekend, and then we handed it to the designer and the programmer. So they were very quickly able to spin something up, see how it looked and functioned and worked, and then pass it off to polish it and make sure that the back end looks correct. And I'm seeing that maybe a little bit more across L&D than I've ever seen before. It's not the waterfall development approach. It's not necessarily ADDIE anymore. It's get something out there. Let's test it. Let's see how it goes. And then let's modify it and move on. So I think this is great that you're doing this. I want to talk a little bit about something that you said before and maybe how it aligns to what OpenSesame does. So your message, OpenSesame's message to the clients is that a chunk of their employees' skills won't survive the next couple of years. They're going to be taken over by AI. And so it's time to really intentionally develop the skills that you want. And I find this really interesting because you all have kept a very knowledgeable set of people dedicated to curation. So you don't do all of your curation by AI, which is one of the things that a lot of organizations outsource to AI immediately. So I'm curious, it can be done by AI, but you're not doing it by AI. What's your reasoning there?
I mean, I don't think it's as much of a contradiction as it appears on the surface. It's really the same belief applied twice, that judgment is the durable skill. And I think the tasks that don't survive are the routine ones. But what does survive is really knowing what good looks like. And that's what our curators do. They aren't, so much clicking through the catalogs anymore. They're making quality judgments across thousands of courses and publishers and helping our customers choose what makes sense for them. And I think that sort of, that thought process applies to our customers as well. I mean, as you know, we have customers with L&D teams of one or two serving billion-dollar businesses, and they just can't do everything that needs to be done with the way that we've historically worked. But AI allows them to automate those routine tasks and spend more of their time using what is hard to automate, which is judgment and their strategic view of the world and their understanding of how their organization works.
Okay. Yeah, I think that does make sense. And it kind of rolls into this next question that I have. You've said publicly that 90% of CEOs don't think that their workforce is ready for what's coming with AI, but only a small number of those are actually investing in development. And we're seeing this. We're seeing L&D teams being decimated. We had a conversation on our roundtable with L&D leaders yesterday that said their senior leadership is saying, okay, now you have to do more than you've ever done before because now you have AI tools. And so it doesn't really feel like the world has gotten the message that we should be investing in development. Why do you think that is? And what do you think the repercussions are for those organizations?
That's another great question. I think the first issue is measurement. companies, our customers, the world in general, we measure completions. We don't measure capabilities so much. And so if you can't really see the gap between where you believe your workforce needs to do and where they actually are, it's hard to justify spending against that. And so I think that's number one. We kind of measure the wrong things, and we don't really have a great way of providing visibility to the C-suite to make decisions based on who actually can do the job that they're purporting to train. I think number two, and this has been across my entire career, training is looked at as a cost center, not an investment on average. And I think costs get cut when things are uncertain. And right now things are very uncertain, which leads to the third thing. People, when there's a lot of uncertainty, there's paralysis. And, the industry and the technology is moving so fast that all of us don't really know what to do sometimes. So people would just rather wait because waiting feels safe. But I don't think it is.
I don't either. Not in this situation. Okay, final question for you. And you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but do you think learning content is becoming more or less important?
I think both, honestly. Okay. I think generic content is becoming worthless. I mean, I think anyone who spends time on social media now, your kind of feeds are flooded with AI generated content. We see some of that in our industry. Anyone can really generate competent sounding courses in a day using any number of the LLMs out there, but that just creates a lot of noise. So I think curated, trusted content is becoming way more valuable for that exact reason. When companies want to make sure that the training that they're providing to their employees meets certain regulatory requirements or industry standards, the provenance, the quality, and the proof of outcome really do matter. And so I think vetted, validated content is becoming more valuable.
I would agree with you. I would 100% agree with you. Josh, thanks for being with me.
Yeah, Dani, thanks so much for having us, and look forward to connecting again soon.
Sounds good. Hey, I just finished talking to Josh Blank, the president of OpenSesame. There were three things in that conversation that kind of stood out to me. The first one was a conversation that I prompted, which is this idea of content. Is it going to become more important or less important? I happen to believe that it's going to become more important, like Josh does. He mentioned the need for sort of validated content so that organizations can make sure that the things that are being taught are the things that they want to be taught. And I'm definitely hearing that in the organizations that I talk to. I refer to Heather a lot, but Heather Stefanski has said as much about how they're thinking about the content that they offer and the development opportunities that they offer folks within McKinsey. So I think that's definitely true. I also wonder if there's a way that content will provide context in a way that we may have not been seeing it before, as we use AI to answer questions and to act as a probing model for our knowledge bases. If the content that we put into that will become even more important because we want the context that people work within to be the way that we want it to be. To happen inside the organization. So that was the first one, was content. The second one was the need for human interaction. I mentioned that Josh, while they are adopting AI in many ways in their organization, they maintain a team of basically consultants and curators to help their clients get the right sort of mix of stuff that for their particular teams. And I find this really interesting in this age because that seems to be one of the first things that gets pushed off, both in the vendors and in the organizations themselves. But he brought up the J word, which I'm hearing over and over again, this idea of judgment. Right now, AI cannot compensate for lack of human judgment. And so if we take judgment out of those kinds of decisions, we sort of move toward the middle and we don't get the nuance that we need in a lot of cases in order to help our organizations grow. And then The third thing that he talked about was his innovation lab, this thing that they've spun up in Austin, Texas, which I think is interesting. I also think it gives us a taste for how development is happening differently than it has before, and how that might change how we as organizations run, and L&D in particularly, how we develop. The ADDIE model might not be the way that we go anymore. We might not use a waterfall approach. Agile might even be outdated. It might be something else, because we now have the capability to do that in a different way. So in general, I agree with Josh's philosophy on what's going on in the space. And I kind of like what they're doing as an organization. They're being very thoughtful about the places that they introduce AI and the ways that they introduce it to make sure that that human and the judgment associated with the humans is not lost. At any rate, thanks for joining me for this episode of 600 Seconds in HR Tech. If you like it, please tell your friends about it and share it broadly. And if you like us, go to redthreadresearch.com and become a member. Thanks so much.